Hi, I'm in a weird mood, but I'm going to attempt to record a thing anyway. This is going to be an attempt at the entirety of resonance theory from memory, and it's going to be horrible, but that's okay. Firstly, I want to start with what resonance theory originally was, because I have been having a hard time figuring out kind of where to start with it, and so I think starting chronologically would be the most useful. Basically, I started using it as a way to describe how I experience interacting with other people. When I interact with other people, I am attempting to do or say things that seem to resonate with people, that create some kind of positive or negative reaction in them. Where, you can either do something that kind of creates a positive resonance or a negative resonance, and the direction of the curve kind of matters, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Basically, there are things that do and don't create reactions in people, and do and don't create certain intensities, and basically the original idea was that you can tell a lot about a person based on what they do and don't react to and how they react to those things. Where, depending on where you throw, I used the example of a blind man throwing rocks into a pond, where if you throw it and there's kind of a small splash, that means you're probably dealing with a small pond. If you do it and there's a big splash, then it's probably a bigger pond. And you can tell a lot about that. But if the waves are really high, like little splash but high intensity. Anyway, there's a lot of different things to that. But if you throw a really big idea, and no splash comes back, then you might have missed their range of understanding. And so this kind of formulated into a couple of different ideas. The first one being that there is basically approach and avoid behaviors in people, where you can either react positively or negatively to things, and that those can kind of interfere with each other. Or if you have multiple positive signals, they will actually amplify each other, where they will do more than each can individually. Where you have, if you have someone who's funny and smart and interesting and hot, that all of those signals for approach are going to be a lot higher. And if someone is ugly and stupid and boring, that all of those negative signals will amplify. And if somebody's hot but stupid, then you have, something like this, which is kind of a conflicting interest, so to speak. Anywho, another thing is all signals basically fade in isolation. This is basically acclimating to a signal, or normalizing, which is the term I use typically. Oh, I forgot where I was in writing the word as I was writing it. That seems fine. Basically, you have positive and negative, and you have normalizing. Basically, that these signals will acclimate over time. And if you have something that is like a constant signal, you will go from having like a baseline from here, where the baseline will be raised to this new signal, where you'll get used to that thing if something positive is always around. And then the funny thing that happens is when that goes away, it creates an absence signal. And this is partially what I call hunger, where it's a signal that your body sends you, or your mind sends you, when there is an absence of something. And I think that's really interesting. One of the most interesting examples of this is addiction and alcoholism, where, you might get a bunch of joy from drinking a bunch, but as you do it more and more and more, you're not doing it to get the same amount of high. You're just getting it to keep up this level of expectation. And then when you go without it, you get the anti pleasure of doing it. And so that's why rehab and all of those things are incredibly difficult, is because you are actively dealing with this really high signal until it eventually normalizes back down to zero. And then, what's that called? Relapsing is basically trying to go back to that normal, to starving too much, basically. But this can happen with a lot of different signals. And one of the really interesting ones to me is kind of like loneliness is a very interesting hunger signal to me. Anywho, that's basically the idea of normalizing it going into hunger. The next idea is, the colored lines are definitely helpful. The next idea is capacity. Basically, we have a bunch of different hunger signals that we are dealing with all of the time, and we're trying to resolve those hungers, whether you're hungry or addicted to alcohol or lonely or bored or need to pee or whatever else. You have all of these hunger signals that are fighting for attention in your brain. And sometimes there will be one that's really strong. It's like, oh my God, I really need to eat right now. Or I really need to pee on this road trip, or whatever else. But otherwise, they're kind of dancing around. And part of what the calculus of our brain does is it looks at the amount of energy we have to literally do things. And it looks at our, let's use yellow. It looks at our capacity to, that's green, right? Yeah. It looks at our capacity of a thing, right? So if we're really good at making people laugh, but we're really bad at making people care, for example, then we're probably going to prioritize spending our energy to doing the thing that we're going to get more yield from. So basically the equation is energy times capacity, I'm so smart, equals yield, right? And so what that means is the more you can balance high energy with high capacity, then you get the most yield for your energy. And you want to get, as much capacity as possible, because then you can get, this much yield. By the way, this is basically like if you were to draw. I'll go here. So if this was like 3 energy and 3 capacity, since they're multiplying from each other, you spend 3 energy to get 9 yield, as opposed to if you only had 1 capacity, you'd only get one yield per energy, if that makes sense. Basic Khan Academy garbage. But basically, all of this boils down to we are constantly doing calculations in our brain of what we are good at and what we are bad at, and what signals we are receiving. By the way, like pain and sadness and all of the negative avoidance signals are things that are going to push us away from things. Again, fundamentally built on the approach and avoid model. But outside of that part of the signals that we're responding to are the hungers in abstract, including regular hunger. And so we are calculating what energy we can spend for what capacities to get the yield of resolving said hungers. And if we oversatiate our hungers, they will be overly normalized to unexpected, unreasonable heights, right? If you need this much food and you're at this much food, you want to get up to resolved. But if you are at Thanksgiving or whatever and you eat too much, then it can become too much. And then you will feel the excess But then if you continue eating too much, then that can normalize, and then you have overeating, right? That's can be a dangerous thing. And basically that's the model. It's a very abstract model of explaining subjectivity and the mechanics by which we think and move. There's a lot of other different moving parts to it. I think the only other thing was value systems, where basically you have certain sensitivities to different signals, right? So if you care more about hotness versus funniness versus intelligence, then someone being hot is going to give you a way higher signal than as opposed to if they're funny, right? But someone else can be totally the opposite, where if they're funny, then they get a really high signal. And so this goes into the calculation of what hungers are stemmed and what we put capacity into, and what good signal is, what high yield is based on the sensitivity of the things we respond to. And I think that's most of the things. I think I'm pretty happy with that model, especially since we only did it in 11:20. So yeah, have a good day.